Hi, hello,
Hi.
hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday. So we'll be talking about Flutter related stuff. Yeah. So we have here Yongshin, which is she's a GDE for Flutter, and we have Shihao who works in the Flutter team in Google Taipei, and Shafras from DevSpace. Hi.
Hey.
Okay. Shafras, do you have anything you want to introduce for DevSpace?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Yongshin. Thanks, Shihao. It's great to have all of you as speakers joining for today's event. So my name is Shafraz. I'm a part of developer relations team here in Singapore. So yes, of course, Eric, I need to give like a little bit of introduction to developer space, which is a virtual one now. So before we begin, let me briefly introduce what virtual developer space and what virtual developer space will do. Google Developer Space is a platform for developers and startups around the region to learn and connect with one another. So Google Developer Space is actually a physical space here at Google Office, but due to COVID-19, we are not able to host any of the activities. So all the activities have been taken into a virtual platform, which is through YouTube, and then with the community's help, we are conducting all these activities. And Developer Space actually would host online events with developers and startup communities, and we are really looking forward to today's event. And if you want to be in touch with Google Developer Space, please do go and check out Developer Space Facebook page, Twitter account, and also we are also available in YouTube channel as well. That you probably might be tuning in now. So without taking much time, I would like to hand back to Eric so he can continue with the Flutter Extender KL event.
Okay, thank you, Shafras. So yeah,
Thank you.
to continue with the dev space, so if you're on GDG KL's YouTube or Facebook, the link should be down in the description. In the for DevFest. So yeah, so maybe we can just jump straight into the event with Shihao.
Hello. Okay, so should I start with my slides now?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, let me do
Ready
this.
when you are. Okay.
Sounds good. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
There's the. Okay.
Oops. Uh-oh. Yikes. Sneak peek.
Perhaps you want to maximize it.
Oh, okay, it's not maximized. Let me see. Not sure what's happening here. Oh, I see. Okay, that's why.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I'm just gonna fade into the background now. Shihao.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Guys, my name is Shihao. I work on the Flutter team in Google in the Bay Area, California. But then right now I'm currently working out of Taiwan. I've been on the Flutter team for about 2 years now. And originally my talk was going to be about the story of a Flutter feature, but then I also gave that talk in 2 separate Flutter Engage extended sessions. So I wanted to do something a little bit different for the Malaysia version because, the previous talk is already available online and I don't want to be repeating myself. But then that also meant that I started on this, I started writing this talk this morning. So there might be some rough edges. I'm going to do a live coding demo. So, things might go wrong, but, hey, we're going to learn about this together, learn about this topic together. And, just bear it with me. So today, my plan was to basically talk a little bit about localizing a Flutter application because, living in a country like Malaysia, like there's like a very interesting situation, right, where we have to localize a Flutter application not only to English, but also to maybe like Malay or Mandarin, or you start from Malay and then you have to localize to English or Mandarin, or like, if you're international, you have to do it for a whole bunch of other countries, like, in like Thailand or Vietnam, and then you'll have to localize your app. So I thought this was like an interesting topic for, this specific session. All right. As I mentioned before, brace yourself. It's going to be a rough demo. We'll see how it goes. I hope to get this done in about maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. So a brief primer for those who don't really know what localization is. It's just basically, like I mentioned before, like supporting multiple locales. So like, for example, like English, Malay, Chinese, but sometimes you have to differentiate for Chinese as well, like traditional versus simplified Chinese. And then for Malay, like Bahasa, you have Bahasa Melayu, but you also have Bahasa Indonesia. So you have to like take those into account. And it's also more than just translation. You have to think about when you lay out your application, is it left to right, is it right to left? As like for example, like Arabic is a right to left language, Japanese is also a right to left scripted language. So you have to take those ideas into consideration when designing your application as well. In Flutter particularly, we use something called ISO 6391. And basically, this is just an attempt to standardize and provide like names and nomenclature to specific locales. So for example, the EN description, the 2-letter EN abbreviation is for English, but it can be EN underscore UK or EN underscore US for like more specific, like, American or like British English. And MS is Bahasa Malaysia. And then I think IN or ID is Bahasa Indonesia. Okay. As I mentioned before, like localization can be pretty complex, right? Like for example, region, like the US and the UK, the English that's spoken there and the English that's written there is very different. I mean, can be very different. Like for example, even with spelling, like flavor, FLAVOR versus VOUR. And I also learned this when I was studying in the US that um, the Americans don't say car park. They get confused when you say car park. They say parking lot. It's like little things like that. And with the written script itself, right? Like I mentioned, traditional Chinese, it's used in like regions like Hong Kong and Taiwan, but it's not used in like the mainland China and in Malaysia. And then, like I mentioned, script and region, like, you might use traditional Chinese for Taiwan and Hong Kong, but then the way you write things in both countries, both regions are very different. Getting translations right. So this is another important piece. Like when you get translations done for an application, you want to think about, who's your translator, right? Like you might just get your friend to translate for your application, or you might have like a vendor that's a translation team for your application, just depending on the scale of what you're doing for your Flutter app. So context is key. Like for example, like this is something my coworker mentioned to me before, that they wrote in their translation, oh, like there's something in the menu bar that you have to tap, but then the translation team came back with the word food menu in Chinese instead of menu bar. So it's like little things like that that you might not think about, but then might actually affect your production application, right? Imagine in your app, instead of saying menu bar, you said, oh, look at this food menu. That's going to be a really awkward situation for your Chinese readers. And then another thing you have to think about is, can your translator understand technical terms, right? Like when I say tooltip, will like the typical, like will someone who doesn't understand tech know what a tooltip is? Will they understand what a long press means? Like when I say something, with machine learning or neural networks or like cryptocurrency or blockchain, will they understand what I'm saying? So, providing them some context for like what those terms might mean, or like, educating your translators about what you're trying to say to your audience. Another thing that you might have to think about is, interpolating variables into your translations, right? I'll go into this a little bit more in the coding demo later, but basically when you say, for example, you have to tap this button X times, like where does that X show up? You have to like, for different languages, like that variable shows up in different parts of your string. So you have to really think about that. Okay. So localizing a Flutter application. So this is basically the tool I'll be using, the workflow I'll be using in my coding demo. I'm going to be using the Flutter gen_ltnn command, and we use art files in Flutter to specify translations. And don't think too much about the details for now. Just think about, I want this talk to be more about the high level idea of like how you would localize a Flutter app, and also just like applications in general and things you want to think about. The repos and the links and everything will be on GitHub, and I'll try to post a link to the slides. So don't think too much about the nitty gritty details. But ARB is just basically like kind of a subset of JSON that basically defines your translations, and also like provides like descriptions and like metadata for those translations for your Flutter application. Yeah, I think that's it for this slide. Okay. And so now we're going to hopefully localize a simple Flutter application. So I'm going to start sharing my screen instead of this slide. Let me see. Not sure how to do this. Give me 1 second. Cool. All right, so this is my editor. And basically, this is a variation of the starter Flutter application that you have when you type Flutter create blah, 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 blah. And so, all this is let me see if I can run the app for you guys just to get you guys to see what it is before we start. Maybe it's better if I share my screen. Give me a moment. Oops. I'm just going to share the whole screen. Cool. Also, if there are any questions about anything along the way, just post your questions, and there'll be a Q&A at the end, and I'll try my best to answer any question by the end of that time. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is just the application, right? It just a very, very simple app. It just has text that says you have push this button however many times. When you press the floating action button down here, basically it just increases the counter. So in this application, there are 3 places that I will need to localize. So the title itself, the text that basically says how many times the counter has been incremented, and basically the tooltip for the floating action button. And what that is when you long press this floating action button, it shows a tooltip here. And for web and desktop applications, when you hover over it for a certain time, it'll show that tooltip as well. All right. So the first thing we'll need to do is I'm going to create an L10N folder. And in that L10N folder, I'm going to specify an ARB file. And I mentioned this before, right? This is basically where all our translations are going to live for our Flutter application. So it's basically like JSON specification. So let me think. I'm going to name the first thing I'm going to do is the title, right? So I'm going to say app bar title. So let me type this out and I'll explain what this is. So basically what this is it's a key value pair. And the key itself is just basically what the Dart getter is going to be called. So your Flutter app, how you're going to reference basically the localization you're trying to go for. And on the right side, the value is basically the string value that's going to appear on your application. So I specified the ARB file. Next thing I need to do is go into my pub spec. Set this to true. The details for all the steps I'm doing in pub spec, they're a little more advanced, so don't think too much about these. But basically, it's just setting up your project so that it supports this localizations workflow. I think it's Flutter localizations, and then it's coming from the Flutter SDK. And I also need to import the INTL package. I just put any in there, but specify whatever version you might need for your application. Let's see. Oh wait, that's db.console. Not bad. Okay, should be fine. Done right. Okay, not yet. Okay, let me rebuild my app real quick. Actually, let me run Flutter Gen L10. Okay, awesome. So if you go into your .dart tool folder, under Flutter Gen L10N, you'll see these files. And basically, these are the localizations files that will be needed to localize your application. One way to make this automatic is basically to generate these files, I had to run Flutter Gen L10N. But one way to make this automatically rerun whenever you run your application or do a hot reload is basically you just specify a file called l10n.yaml in your root Flutter project like this. And you don't have to specify anything in here right now. But basically what you would have to do in here eventually is like put in your options, if you have any, for how you want to generate your localizations. That's all described in Flutter gen ltnn help. Like there are a list of options here, so like don't worry too much about this. Like this is not very important for what we're doing right now. Okay. So now when I run my Flutter app, command. Like I said, it's gonna be a little rough because I didn't have time to practice. I built this morning, and I'm just hoping that nothing goes wrong as I go along. Let's see. Okay, let's see if there's anything anyone said. Okay, cool. Okay, great. The app is building. I haven't really introduced anything yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import actually Flutter gen, and then it's gen ltnn, and then I'm going to import actually, I knew this was going to happen. Let me see. It's true. Get all the dependencies. Oh, there we go. Cool. And so if you look into here, basically there's a app localizations class, and basically all it does is just think of it as like what you use to get all of the localizations that you'll be generating. So for example, in the English version of in the English subclass, we have a string getter called @bar_title, and it just basically returns Flutter localizations demo. And pay attention to the Dart file and the ARB file. Basically, the ARB file specifies the definition of this generated Dart file. So notice that the getter itself is titled after the key, and then the value is basically following the value specified in the art file. Cool. And so what we're going to do is basically, first of all, we need to specify in the material app that we want to support a bunch of locales. So support locales, localizations delegate. So this is just like the necessary setup that you need to do to get your Flutter app to support localization. You need to specify the list of support locales and the list of localizations delegates, which are the localizations delegates is generated by the gen ltnn like command. And so basically where I'm getting these lists, these delegates and these support locales is in the generate class. There are two like helper static getters, and they just basically specify a list of localizations delegates that will be like, basically these are the default version values, and you can customize them however you want and just like manually like insert whatever you want in here. But this is one of the nice things about this, like basically you don't about the workflow, you don't have to specify it yourself, and you can just use the values use the default values provided. So here support locales only says English because we only have an English art file specified. So now in my app, if I go and grab the app bar title, oh yeah, this is a new null safety thing. So when I do a restart or a reload, it should just say exactly what it said before. And I'm going to test one thing real quick. Let me just add the word haha at the end of this. The hot reload. And hey, there's an update. So now it's grabbing basically it's getting the value from the ARM file rather than a string that's specified in your Flutter code. Awesome. Okay, so that's the first step. I'm going to specify one of those. Remember how I said in l10n.yaml, this is where you specify properties or like kind of like customizations for your workflow. I'm going to do something called nullable getter and set it to true. And what that does is basically, I'm assuming that it's nullable. Let me see if that works as I expected it to. Like I said, this is a demo I hadn't practiced, so might be a little wonky. Okay, let them do it. So okay, anyway, let's just ignore that. So what this is supposed to do is make the getter non-nullable by default, but you know, oh wait, I'm supposed to set it false. Maybe that's why. Ah, yeah, there we go. Yeah, basically, to make the code backwards compatible, it has to be nullable by default. But then I introduced a new parameter lately called nullable getter. And if you set it to false, it makes it non-nullable by default, and so it can make your code a little bit cleaner. So you have to add the exclamation point after every call to get app localizations. Awesome. Okay. So next two things I need to localize are this text here and the tooltip, or like get set up. I haven't localized it yet. So let's call this, I guess, counter description text. You have pushed this button this many times. So this is one of those situations I was talking about earlier, right? You want to interpolate a variable into here because what's happening is you can't translate the counter value itself. You need to grab it from your app state instead of, like hard coding it for your translator, because that's just impossible. So one of the extra things you need to do is you need to specify some metadata. Oops, sorry about that. How you do that is you just basically have another key value pair where it's prefixed with an @ and then basically the exact same name as the variable, the key of the value that you're trying to translate or localize. I don't know why the system UI keeps like not responding, so just ignore that for now. And this is also a good place to put in a description. So basically, what we use this in, at least in the Flutter gallery, is we use it to help describe to translators, provide some context for the translators as to what this translation is for. Like, remember how I mentioned with like highly specific applications, maybe it's like specific to like finance or economics or some kind of title or some kind of topic that your translator might not be familiar with. This is the place to put it. So for example, I could say, the application has a counter for how many times a button is pressed. This describes the text. This is text describing that behavior. Something along those lines, right? I just came up with that on the spot, but you guys can probably come up with something better with more time. And so then this is the more important, not more important, but like one of the key pieces for interpolation. So basically you specify a key called placeholder. And here in my art file, I called it count. So then here I also need to specify that the placeholder's name is count. Oh, sorry, not counter. I leave it as an empty object, but sometimes you might have to specify some metadata, but in this case, we don't have to do anything. And so once I do a hard reload and I look into the file, notice that now there's a string getter called counter description text. Oh, it's not correct. So it's supposed to do interpolation, but then that means I did something wrong. Let me take a quick look. placeholder maybe. Yeah, there we go. So now it's not a getter anymore. It's a method that basically takes a count, and then it returns a string interpolating that count into your complete string. So then how I would use this in my application is I would basically say app localizations of context, and then I would say locale name. Oh, not locale name. I forgot the name of the description text. And then I would insert the counter as an argument. And look, nothing has changed here. And just to verify that it did the right thing, I'm just going to add some like some garbage text at the beginning of the R file and just see if it modifies correctly. There we go. And hard reload. There we go. Nice. All right, and then the last thing is the simple piece of the tooltip. So tooltip description, and then, oh wait, missing a comma. And I just say tooltip. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to say increment, not tooltip, my bad. Actually, let's leave it at tooltip just to see if it works. I've been hard reloaded. There we go. Awesome. So it says tooltip, and then I'm going to modify it to increment instead. I should update. Awesome. Great. So this is the first step, right? Just basically getting your application set up to handle the workflow, specifying the English versions of everything, and then your app is basically set up for localization. The next step you have to do is basically start translating all the translations. So here, I'm going to specify app_ms.arb. Oh yeah, another important thing. So the R files have to be titled, you can call the beginning anything you want, and then underscore, and then the ISO 639 codes I was talking about before. So here it's English, and then here it's going to be Malay. And so what I'm going to do right now is just do a quick copy paste over. But then one of the things is you don't have to do the metadata for translations. You only have to do it for the template language. And in this case, it was the English version. So right now, if I set my app to Malay, it would still give the English localizations because I haven't like renamed everything. And lucky for me, I already translated everything ahead of time. And these are pulled out of Google Translate, and I kind of like manually handled it based on like the Malay I still remember. So if it's wrong, I'm sorry. But it'll still it'll like serve the purpose of the demo. So basically, I'm just replacing every key value pair for the Malay translation with the actual Malay translation. So this would probably be like what you would get from your translator, or if you're translating the app yourself, just like translating it yourself. Oh, this shouldn't be this, but it's okay. It says tooltip instead of increment, so apologize for that. Awesome. So once I do a hot reload, it seems like nothing has changed because the emulator I'm using is currently set to English. But if I set it to Malay, you should see that everything should update to Malay if there are no problems. And as everything with live coding goes, there's a problem. Let me see. Or maybe it's not MS. Let me do a quick Google search. Oops, sorry about that. I think it's MS. And did I? Oh, I did do MS. Okay, so this should work. I'm not exactly sure why it's not working, but let me take a look again. Okay, set Malay on top. Whoops. refresh the application. Okay. One thing I've noticed is that the Malay localizations hadn't been generated, so I had to like hand run it. I think it's a bug with the workflow, so I apologize for that. So now that the appropriate Dart file has been generated, let's do a hard restart and it should work properly. Great, now everything's in Malay. So notice here, I mentioned this before, right? Like this interpolates a variable. So the cool thing here is like basically you can just specify here, oh, I want the count to go into the sentence over here. And yeah, so this is basically a quick run through of localizing an application to Malay from English. And it's a very, very simple app. And you can imagine that with bigger apps, there's a lot more going on. So I don't need to demo all of that because the Flutter gallery itself actually has all of this set up. I'm going to show you really quickly on GitHub. I didn't plan to do this, but everything is freestyle right now. So yeah, if you look at the Flutter gallery, there's an L10N file, and it specifies the R file for every language that the gallery supports, right? I wonder if Malay supported it. Let's take a look. Yeah, it is. Great. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yeah, some of it is. Some of it hasn't been translated yet, and some of it has been. So if you look here, like these are all the Malay translations for what you would see inside the gallery application. So yeah, like if you want to see another example of an app that's local, a Flutter app that's localized, the Flutter gallery is the place to go. And I think that's the end of my talk. Yeah, so I just wanted to end with that demo to show how you would localize a Flutter application. There's a lot of complexity, and we try to like hide that away from you guys. So I hope that was very helpful, and I'll take questions at the end after the end of all of this. So thank you guys.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Shahal. Actually, very interesting. I'm not even a Flutter dev, and I'm interested in it. I think if you're wondering, how does Shahal know about Malay? He's Malaysian. Yeah, which is quite relevant since he's speaking for GDG KL. But yeah, so as he said earlier, so Q&A will be at the end of the session. Since I don't see a lot of questions. Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe at the end of the session, you can share your social links again if you want people to contact you. Right. So we have the next coming up, which is Yongxin. Hi, Yongxin.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. So Yongxin will be talking about input formatting in Flutter, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Ready when you are. I'll put your screen up.
Okay. Thank you, Chi-Hong, and thank you everyone for joining us. So today I'm going to talk about input formatters in Flutter, which is also known as the format as you type kind of form validation. So the title was originally format as you go, but later on I thought format as you type is more accurate and sounds less like a marketing pitch. So that's what the input formatters do, format as you type. First, a little bit about me. I'm Yongxian. I've just recently become a Google developer expert in Flutter, and I'm a full-time Flutter developer in commercial solutions since about 2 to 3 years ago. And so far, I'm enjoying most of the experience of developing with Flutter because of how easy it is to learn and also to build beautiful UI and to provide good user experience to our app users. And I'm also a director of Women Who Code KL, which is a non-profit organization that help people of all genders, and especially women, to excel in their technology careers. And lastly, if you have any questions on Flutter, feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. And I also wrote a few articles on Medium. I'm planning to write more, so if you are interested, you can follow me on Medium. And I have also set up a few code repositories of Flutter examples in my GitHub as well, so you can have a look and leave some feedback. So now let's dive into our topic today, which is about input formatters. But what are input formatters? So this is what I've been talking about. Like, let's say in your text field, you want to allow the user to input only numbers, and you want to display the 1,000 separators as user type in the numbers. Or you want to put a space after every 4 digits in the credit card number field. And maybe you want to have a date placeholder so that your user can just type in the numbers. They don't have to put in the slashes. So in general, these are the things that improve user experience and also reduce the chance of getting an invalid input. So, and yeah, so this is what I've mentioned just now. It provides a as you type validation and formatting of the text that is being edited. And there are many examples of such application like credit card numbers, phone numbers, zip codes, currency values, and yeah, there are a lot more. Well, then you will ask, why do we use input formatters and not input validation, where you just show an error message right below the field? That's because sometimes it is more useful to just block user from typing the characters that are not allowed instead of just showing a validation message. So next, we are going to look at how do we achieve this in Flutter. And lucky for us, we have a text input formatter class in Flutter that can make our life much easier. And feel free to look up the documentation of the class in this link over here. But if you're too lazy to read, I'm going to explain about what's in there in a second. And there are 3 built-in implementations of text input formatter. So first, let's say you want to limit the number of characters that is being input to the field. Then you can use the length limiting text input formatter. So once user has entered X number of characters, then the field will truncate the characters that comes after the length X. Then we also have the filtering text input formatter. There are 2 ways of defining this. So one is if you want to allow only a certain set of characters to be entered, then you can use the filtering text input formatter .allow. And on the other hand, if you want to blacklist only a certain set of characters, then you can use the filtering text input formatter .deny. All right. And now for the filtering text input formatter, there are 2 static properties that come with the predefined regular expressions that you can use. First one is for digits only. So this will allow only digits to be entered in the text field once applied. And it uses the filtering text input formatter .allow to do that. And the second one is single line formatter. This basically allows only one line by using filtering text input formatter .deny to disallow the input of the new line character, which is /n. And there are more examples. So as long as you can imagine it in regular expression, then you can filter in whatever way that you want. So if you want to allow alphabets only, then use the filtering text input formatter .allow and throw in the expression that contains the set of alphabets. Or if you want to disallow dashes, then you can use a filtering text input formatter .deny and throw in dash in there, and you are ready to go. So no dash allow. Just for your information, Dash is a mascot of Dart and Flutter. And what you're saying that's not enough, then you can always implement it yourself. So what you do is just to extend the text input formatter class and implement the format edit update method. And here's an example that I found in the Flutter gallery code base. that formats the number input to follow the US telephone number format, which has the brackets, spaces, and dashes. So as you can see, the possibilities are endless. And after you have prepared your text input formatters, where do you place them? It's very simple. Just have to throw in your formatters into the input formatters list of the text field that you want to apply the formatters, and that's it. And you can see here, you can throw in as many formatters as you like, but take note that the final result will be an intersection of all the input formatters in the list. So this makes it very convenient if you want to combine the input formatters, like filtering text input formatters dot digits only, and also a length limiting text input formatter. So that in this case, for this text field, the user will only be able to input only digits and only up to 8 digits. And of course, you have to be careful not to put any conflicting input formatters, then you will get some unexpected result. Okay, I've done enough talking. Let's see them in action. Meanwhile, please help me to keep your fingers crossed so that we can have everything run smoothly. But lucky for me, I don't have to do live coding like Shihao does. So I have already prepared the codes here, and I built a Flutter app that shows the examples, like the types of the input formatters, and then also some applications of that. So as you can see here, there are the three types of input formatters that I have covered just now. The first one is .allow. Then we have also the .deny, and finally the length limiting text input formatter. So if you want to use them, it's very simple. You just have to plug it into the text field, as you can see here. And then I put my input formatters here. So this takes in a list of text input formatter. So as long as the class here, it extends text input formatter, then you'll be allowed to put here. So for the first one is a filtering text input formatter that allows alphabets in small letter and capital letters, and also a space character. So let's see what I can type in here. So I can type in any alphabets in capital letter also, and then I can type in space characters. So this is what it does. And then next we can look at the filtering text input formatter .deny, which here you will define the set of characters that you don't want the user to input. So here we have this one. So it disallows the input of a space character. So I still can input my alphabets. I can even input numbers, but I will not be able to input space. So this is what it does. And I will not be able to, here we have a single line formatter, which forces input to be a single line so that you cannot have multiple lines in here, which here I couldn't press the enter anyway, so it's okay. And then finally, we have the length limiting text input formatter. So this one, I put 8, so it means I can only input up to 8 characters. So let's input anything that we want. Then I will not be able to continue input anymore. It will stop here once it has reached 8 characters. And just now what I mean is if let's say you want to combine multiple input formatters, is fine. It's just like this. You can put as many as you want. Just that you have to be careful to not put conflicting ones. Like for example, if I uncomment this, and hit save. So what will happen here is I will not be able to input digits or any alphabets because these two rows are conflicting each other. So you have to be careful not to do that. Let me uncomment again. Okay, now we can look at our examples. So here I have listed down quite a number of examples that we often see in apps. So first we have the credit card number. So let's open up the code. Yeah, so it is this part. And then here for text view, you can also define the keyboard that is shown so that, okay, when user tap on your field, so this is the keyboard type that is shown on screen. So here I only want to allow user to type in numbers only. So I just put a text input type dot number. There are the other text input type also, you can explore it on your own. So here I have one credit card formatter and then also the length limiting text input formatter, which I set to 19 because credit card numbers are usually in 16 digits. And then we have three separators, which is the space. So you can see the effect here. Let me type in something. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, I'll just go like this: 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then once it has reaches this, then I will not be able to input anymore. So here I use a custom text input formatter because I couldn't find anything that is built in that can support to place a space in between every 4 digits. So let's dive in and see how's the code like. So here I'm extending the text input formatter. And then if you extend this class, then you have to override this method, the format, this method, and then you will write a function that return the text editing value. So here I also have a built-in function. No, it's not a built-in function. It's also a function that I wrote, and I also copied from this particular code repository. Thanks to that. So there, I copied out this part because here it adjusts the selection index pretty well. So the first step is you want to remove all the invalid characters. So let's say if your field only allows numbers, then you want to filter out the characters that are not numbers. So this is what it does. I'm calling the text input formatter that I define in my credit card formatter here. So it's digits only. And then after that, I do some manipulation to calculate the correct selection index after each character input by the user. And finally, you will return a text editing value that comes with the value of the updated text, and then also the selection. So this is the position of the cursor on each character input. And finally, you have this composing as well. To text range the empty means that to tell Flutter that the user is not composing anymore. So let's go back to the credit card formatter. And then here I have a format pattern, which is run somewhere during here, yeah, which is before I return the final text editing value. So here is where I define what is the pattern of the final output that I want it to look like. So in short, it is just trying to insert a separator, which is a space character on every fourth number. So yeah, this is what it does. And finally, we have this custom text input formatter that helps us to format the credit card number. Then we can go to the second one. The second one, I believe I am using, this one. I also have two text input formatter here. So one is the telephone number formatter, and then second one is also to limit the length of the characters that can be entered. So that here you can see the effect. If I enter 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, after the, okay, I should use the keyboard here. After the 9th character, then you cannot input anymore. And also I insert the dash on after the third number, and also a space here so that it will look better. And let's see how it is implemented. So same, I'm also extending the text input formatter. And then right here, you can see that in my format pattern, I just look through the filtered string, and then what it does here is on the fourth character, then you write a dash, and then on the 8th character you write a space. So yeah, with this one, then you can do something like this. It's very powerful, right? Okay, now let's continue to the next one, which is 1000 grouping. So again, here I have only one formatter, which I call it the thousands formatter. So let's see the result first. So here I didn't specify the keyboard type, so maybe I should do that. Keyboard type, text input number, text input type dot number. Okay. And yeah, so now it is showing a number pad instead of the full keyboard. And then go to our thousands formatter. Here, this one is a bit complicated because this particular class, I will generalize it to support fractions, which is has decimal places after the integer, and then also I will allow it to support the sign numbers. So let's look at this one. Let's enter some numbers here. So here on every third digits, then there will be a separator here. So this is the thousands grouping. And what I use here is, and again, I'm using the text manipulation method that I wrote. And then here, the text input formatter that is being used on this field is the usual digits only, but with a dash if it allows negative number. And then for the format pattern, then this one is for negative numbers. And then this one is for decimal numbers. So I'm trying to parse the number that is input by the user. Then after that, I will use the formatter to format the number, which the formatter is this one, the number format. This is something that I import from the INTL package. So they have many different number formatters, which is very useful. In our case, for one example is to group thousands together, or to support decimal numbers, or even for displaying the currency values. So I'm making use of that one to format the final display. And the rest of it is just some edge cases handling. Yeah. So let's go back here and see what is the next one. Then we have the decimal number. Here, okay, let's tap on this. Then you can see that you can define a text input type. You can use a text input type dot number with options. So when you put decimal is true, then you will see that on your number keypad there is a dot. So this is for you to enter the decimal number. So let's enter something. So here I can input the decimal places, but I will not be able to input more than 2 decimal places, because here in the thousands formatter, I have a default value of decimal places 2, which I pass into the number of decimal places in the number format, so that this formatter will help us to format and truncate the user input. So we can do this pretty easily. So yeah, it has the 1000 separator as well. And I can do this. All right, now let's move on to the next one, which is the number with negative. So here, then again, this is the same, but this time is with sign true. Then as you can see here, the keyboard that is displayed is the full size keyboard, because in iOS they don't have a number keypad that can cater for the negative sign. So in iOS they will show a full keyboard, but you can always control the input by using your text input formatter. So here I put the allow negative true and allow fraction is also true. Then you can see that, okay, in this input, I can put in the negative sign and I can put in my numbers. And it also supports the decimal numbers as well. So now let's go to the final one, which is the currency value. So here, if you see in the banks, it's very common for you to see that, okay, if I want to enter 10 ringgit, then I will need to start entering 1000. So this input formatter will help us to achieve that purpose, and you will see it in a second. Yeah, so again, extending text input formatter. And this time I'm making use of the number format .currency, which it has a lot of localization codes that you can put in here. So here I'm using this one, and then you can also define the symbol to display. So I think if I commented out this one, then you will see it starts with NYR instead of RM. So this part is very flexible. You can define it here. And again, here it is very similar to the thousands formatter. The only thing that is different here is I did some magic, which is instead of letting the user to type everything, including the decimal separator, the dot, here I'm just letting user to input the number, the digits itself, and not with the decimal dot. So yeah, there are a lot of edge cases to handle, as you can see here. And let's say if you don't want to handle the selection index, which is crucial if you want to support the input from user's keyboard, like not the on-screen keyboard, because on-screen keyboard is usually okay if you want to let user to press this thing only. And if you just disable this cursor, then you have much less pain to handle. So what I mean is, if let's say the user wants to go back to the previous position, which is not the end of your string, then you want to handle this correctly. Like if I want to change this to 1,556. Okay, so as you can see just now, after I have inserted the characters, then it's the selection index, it remains at here at the correct the correct index. And this is very important if you want to provide a good user experience. So if you can control, like to disable this one, to not let user to start editing from the middle, then you will have much easier life in trying to determine the correct index by using this function instead. So I have a second version of the text manipulation where I don't care about the position of that cursor on every edit. So what I did is I just apply the input parameters, I apply the format pattern, and then I just return it, and I put the offset. This one, it means the position of this cursor at the end of the string itself. Then this will be much less complicated. So just offering an alternative way to deal with this if you can, if you have a choice. Yeah. So yep, that's the end of my demo today. Let's go back to the slides. So actually, I don't have any more slides. So yeah, as you can see, the possibilities are endless. You can try the text input formatter today. You would not regret it. And I have the source codes of the demos ready in my GitHub. So feel free to check it out and use it in your code. But I cannot guarantee that the codes are bug-free. So if you found any issue, please file it there. Or if you want to suggest an improvement, you can create a pull request. And if you have any questions on Flutter, feel free to ask now or reach me on LinkedIn. So that's it for my sharing today. Thank you so much for listening, and passing the stage back to Chi-Hong.
Hi, hello, I'm back. Thank you, Yongshin, for the talk. Okay, so maybe we can jump straight into Q&A. So let me just quickly go down, and I see that there's a question from Darren Green. How to display author name in the code editor? I think this is for you, Shihao. I guess it's a comment, right?
I read it already, and I can't remember, but basically it must be some integrated feature of VS Code, which is the IDE I use, or I must have installed some kind of plugin that does that kind of ties into how Git works. So sorry, I don't have a clear answer, but my ID is Git. Sorry, it's not GitHub. It's VS Code, and then there might be some plugin I use for GitHub or Git, and that's why I can see that.
Okay, cool. Here's another question from Wei Yang. Is there a possible way to do localizations without context?
I think it's possible, but the workflows that we provide use localizations with context, because I think the idea is that the translations could update like in real time, or like let's say you switch between localizations, you have to like push the load the values like asynchronously, right? So if you do it kind of synchronously and you have it as part of your Dart code, maybe you could come up with your own system to have localizations done without accessing the context as well.
Cool. Okay. As usual, if you have any questions, please send now. So this is a Q&A session. And the next question will be, will this be applied to hide the password as the user types? I guess this is for Yongxin for input formatter.
This one you can use this one to hide the password, but there is a better way to do this, which is already in the text form field itself. I think it has one property called obscure text. So you just set that to true, so that then the password will be hidden. You don't have to do extra things on that. Yeah.
This is just a question on my part. Quite curious. Can you obscure the text and also format with, like, for example, additional commas when adding more numbers?
I believe you can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's totally possible.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Hi. If we use input formatter when the user clicks on submit, does the value being submitted includes all characters added by the formatter?
I would say yes, because then again, if you don't want them to, if you don't want the value to include the separators, or if you want to filter out some of the characters from the form values, you can also do that in the function when you submit it. So yeah, it depends. Both ways are possible.
Okay, cool. And then another question from Darren. So for localization, can we include different formats for number and date, time used by different locales?
Yes, actually there's a, what do you call it? Like the art file, it takes a setting, and I think it's called format. There's the specifics of that are in the, I forget which document specifically, but basically, yes, this is supported, but then I have to figure out where to get it. I'll like share a link if I can find it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so for the links, I will be releasing, when the video is ready, we'll be releasing the replay and also all the links to our speakers' socials and also additional information and reading. Right. So don't worry, we'll be sharing it out when it's ready. So I guess there's not a lot of questions left. But yeah, so I guess we can end it here if there's no more questions. And as usual, like if any of the viewers have any questions, especially those coming from the future, if there's any questions, you can always ping our speakers here, which we'll be sharing social media links. Yeah, so I guess that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yongxin and Shao. And also thanks to the viewers for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. I hope you have a nice day, and yeah. Okay, goodbye.
Right,
Bye.
bye. Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone. Bye.